Dear listener, welcome once more to the Hercule Poirot story podcast, where the little grey cells awaken to unravel the most perplexing enigmas of the human soul. Tonight, we transport you to the fog-enshrouded outskirts of London in the year 1932, an era of jazz melodies and shadowed secrets, where the clatter of trams echoes like forgotten whispers from a bygone age. Imagine, if you will, a desolate tram stop on the fringes of the city, once a bustling hub in the Edwardian splendour, now abandoned to the whims of decay and disuse. The Forgotten Tram Stop, they call it, where rusted rails vanish into the perpetual gloom of the Thames fog. On this fateful evening, a storm brews overhead, thunder rumbling like the discontent of the gods, while rain slicks the cobblestones, turning them into treacherous mirrors of the night sky. It is here, amidst this melancholic tableau, that murder much foul has stained the platform with blood. Join us, dear listener, as we delve into the labyrinth of motives and misdirections. Pour yourself a tisane, dim the lights, and engage your own little grey cells. Who knows? Perhaps you shall unmask the culprit before the great Hercule Poirot himself. But beware, the truth is often cloaked in the most elegant of deceptions. Chapter 1. The Crimson Discovery. The fog enveloped the East End of London like a spectral embrace, its tendrils weaving through the narrow alleys and forsaken corners, with a persistence that seemed almost malevolent. It was the autumn of 1932, and the city, though alive with the hum of modernity, motor cars, jazz clubs, and the clatter of typewriters, still harboured pockets where time lingered, reluctant to move forward. One such place was the Forgotten Tram Stop, a relic of Edwardian ambition, now relegated to obscurity on the city's fringes, where the Thames exhaled its damp breath into the night air. Once, this platform had bustled with top-hatted gentlemen and women in voluminous skirts, their voices mingling with the jangle of tram bells. Now, it stood desolate, its rusted rails vanishing into the mist, the benches warped by years of neglect, and the air heavy with the scent of decay, moss, iron, and something more sinister. On this particular evening, a storm brewed over London, its portentous rumble echoing like the discontent that seeped from his chest. The rain had diluted the gore, creating rivulets that snaked across the platform, pooling in the crevices of the cobblestones. His face, once stern and commanding, now bore the slack-jawed vacancy of death, his eyes staring unseeing into the fog. A dagger protruded from his heart, an ornate weapon of Eastern design, its hilt encrusted with garish faux jewels that glinted mockingly in the lamplight. The blade was an anomaly, a theatrical flourish in a setting otherwise defined by decay. Who would choose such a weapon? And why wield it here, at a tram stop forsaken by all but ghosts? The discovery of the body fell to Constable Arthur Wilkins, a young man of 22 whose earnest demeanour and ruddy cheeks belied his inexperience with such grim spectacles. His nightly patrol, a routine slog through the damp streets, had taken an unexpected turn when he ventured toward the tram stop, drawn by some inexplicable instinct, or perhaps merely the need to escape the wind's bite. His lantern, swinging in his gloved hand, cast erratic beams through the fog, illuminating the scene in fragments. The glint of the dagger, the sprawl of the body, the scarlet stain spreading like an accusation. "Good Lord above," he whispered, his voice trembling with the weight of a youth unaccustomed to mortality's brutal hand. He knelt, his boots squelching in the wet, and held the lantern closer. The light revealed more than he wished to see. Footprints, muddied and chaotic, crisscrossing the platform. Some were broad and heavy, suggesting a man's purposeful tread. Others were dainty, almost delicate, as if their owner had danced through the rain. A scrap of scarlet silk, torn and sodden, lay discarded near the bench, its vibrant hue a jarring contrast to the monochrome misery of the scene. Wilkins's heart pounded as he fumbled for his whistle, its shrill cry piercing the fog and summoning aid. Within the hour, the Forgotten Tram Stop was no longer forgotten. Constables swarmed the platform, their lanterns bobbing like fireflies, their voices a low murmur against the patter of rain. The scene was cordoned off, though the effort seemed futile in a place so abandoned. Word of the murder spread swiftly through the ranks. Industries, railways, shipping, and, notably, the tram system that had once made this very stop a hub of activity. Yet his success came at a cost. Whispers of old grudges followed him like shadows, business partners outmaneuvered, rivals bankrupted, and families left destitute by his shrewd dealings. His wealth was a monument to his intellect, but also a magnet for envy and resentment. Had one such grudge found its reckoning in the fog? The footprints offered the first tangible clue, though their message was muddled by the rain. Constable Wilkins, now joined by his superior Sergeant Hargreaves, a grizzled man with a face like weathered oak, pointed out the tracks with a trembling finger. "Look here, sir," he said, his voice steadier now, though still tinged with awe. "Two sets at least. One's heavy like a man's boots, but the other's smaller. Could be a woman's, maybe." Hargreaves grunted, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the scene. "Or someone wants us to think it's a woman," he muttered, his mind already attuned to the possibility of deception. The scarlet silk, too, drew their attention. It was no common fabric. Its weave suggested expense, perhaps torn from a shawl or a dress. Hargreaves pocketed it carefully, wrapping it in his handkerchief, though the rain had already leached much of its potential for revelation. The dagger, however, was the true enigma. Its ornate design spoke of distant lands, perhaps India or Persia, places Thornwood had never been known to visit. Its presence suggested premeditation, a choice made not in haste but with deliberate intent. Was it a symbol, a message, or merely a convenient tool? The constables debated this in hushed tones, their voices drowned by the occasional clap of thunder. "Looks like something from a museum," one remarked, shaking his head. "Or a stage prop," another added, half in jest. Yet there was nothing theatrical about the wound it had inflicted. A single, precise thrust to the heart, delivered with a force that suggested both strength and resolve. As the constables worked, the fog began to lift, revealing the tram stop in all its dilapidated glory. The platform was bordered by a crumbling shelter, its glass long shattered, its iron frame rusted into fragility. Beyond it, the tracks stretched into the distance, swallowed by the mist that clung to them. About the inconvenience of late-night calls. The scene had been thoroughly catalogued. The body was covered, though the rain had already washed away much of the blood. The dagger remained in place, awaiting the coroner's inspection. The footprints, the silk, the weapon, all were clues, yet they pointed in too many directions. The constables, trained for order, found themselves grappling with chaos. "This will be one for the yard," Hargreaves declared, his voice heavy with resignation. "And not just any detective. We'll need someone with a mind sharper than this blasted dagger." As the storm retreated, leaving only the steady drip of rain, the Forgotten Tram Stop stood silent once more, its secrets locked in the fog. Elias Thornwood's death was no mere crime. It was a puzzle, a labyrinth of motives and misdirections that demanded a master to unravel it. Little did they know, such a master was already on his way, his little grey cells poised to illuminate the shadows of this crimson night. Chapter 2. The Arrival of the Belgian. The dawn broke over London with a reluctance that mirrored the city's mood, its pale light struggling to pierce the remnants of the night's fog. The Forgotten Tram Stop, still cordoned by the constabulary's makeshift barriers, stood as a silent witness to the previous evening's horror. The rain had ceased, leaving the cobblestones slick and the air thick with the scent of wet earth and rust. The platform, bathed in the grey half-light, seemed even more forlorn, its rusted rails and splintered bench a testament to a prosperity long faded. The ornate dagger, still embedded in Elias Thornwood's chest, caught the first rays of sunlight, its faux jewels winking with a cruel irony. The scene was one of desolation, yet it pulsed with the unspoken questions that only a mind of singular acuity could unravel. In the opulent confines of his apartment at Whitehaven Mansions, Hercule Poirot prepared for the day with the meticulous precision of a man for whom order was both creed and comfort. His egg-shaped head, crowned with sleek black hair, gleamed under the soft glow of a crystal chandelier. His moustaches, waxed to perfection, curved with a symmetry that bespoke his fastidious nature. His eyes, green as polished emeralds, sparkled with an intellect that saw beyond the surface of things, delving into the labyrinthine depths of human motive. "Anticipation rather than amusement. Mon ami Jap," he murmured, always the summons to the scene of chaos. He donned his overcoat, its cut impeccable, and selected a hat that sat at precisely the correct angle. With a final glance in the mirror to ensure his appearance was as orderly as his mind, he set forth, his cane tapping a rhythm against the pavement, as he hailed a taxi to the East End. The Forgotten Tram Stop came into view as the taxi navigated the fog-dampened streets, its desolate silhouette emerging like a ghost from the mist. Poirot alighted with the grace of a man accustomed to commanding attention, his diminutive stature belied by the authority in his gaze. Inspector Japp awaited him, a burly figure whose ruddy complexion and weathered features spoke of years spent wrestling with London's underbelly. Japp's psychological profile was one of pragmatic cynicism, a man who trusted facts over fancies, yet relied on Poirot's genius to illuminate the shadows. "Nasty business, Poirot," Japp said, his voice gruff as he gestured toward the covered form of Elias Thornwood. "Stabbed clean through the heart with that gaudy knife. No witnesses, of course. This place hasn't seen a soul in years, except last night, it seems." Poirot's eyes swept the platform, taking in every detail with the precision of a painter committing a scene to canvas. The footprints, now partially obscured by the constable's trampling, caught his attention first. "Observe, mon ami," he said, crouching with surprising agility for a man of his fastidiousness. "These impressions, see how they overlap. The heavy tread, broad and deliberate, suggests a man of purpose. But these smaller prints, so delicate, they dance around the others. A woman, perhaps, or a clever deception." His fingers, gloved in immaculate kid leather, traced the air above the tracks, as if coaxing secrets from the very stones. The scrap of scarlet silk, now in the hands of Sergeant Hargreaves, drew Poirot's scrutiny next. He examined it with a jeweller's loupe, his brow furrowing slightly. "This fabric, it is not of common make," he declared. "Silk of such quality, with this weave, imported, perhaps from Paris or Milan. It speaks of wealth, or at least the pretence of it." He handed it back to Hargreaves, who muttered constabulary tent where the first of the suspects awaited. Amelia Thornwood, the widow, stood with the poise of a statue, her raven hair pinned severely beneath a black veil. In her 40s, she possessed a beauty that time had sharpened rather than softened. Her high cheekbones and piercing grey eyes, suggesting a woman accustomed to command. Her psychological profile was one of guarded composure, a fortress of restraint that concealed either profound grief or calculated guile. Her motive, Japp whispered, was inheritance, a fortune that Elias had controlled with an iron grip, leaving Amelia to beg for pin money despite their lavish lifestyle. "He was a good man," she said, her voice low and measured, "but not a kind one." Her alibi, a quiet evening at home with a novel, lacked corroboration, and her eyes, when they met Poirot's, flickered with something unspoken. Next came Victor Langley, Thornwood's business partner, a gaunt man whose hollow cheeks and perpetual scowl spoke of years spent in the shadow of his partner's success. His suit, though well tailored, hung loosely on his frame, as if he had withered under the weight of resentment. Psychologically, Langley was a cauldron of suppressed rage, his pride wounded by Elias's dominance in their shared ventures. His motive, a financial dispute over funds Thornwood had allegedly siphoned from their joint accounts. "He was a cheat," Langley spat, his voice raw with venom. "He called it business, I call it theft." His alibi, a solitary evening at his gentleman's club, was shaky, the porter recalling only that Langley had come and gone at some point. Poirot noted the tremor in Langley's hands, a sign of nerves or something darker. The third suspect, Clara Belmont, was a stark contrast to the others. At 25, she radiated youthful vitality, her golden curls and bright blue eyes lending her an air of innocence that Poirot suspected was carefully cultivated. The niece of Elias Thornwood, she had been disinherited after a heated family quarrel, her dreams of independence crushed by her uncle's refusal to fund her ambitions. Psychologically, she was a blend of impetuosity and cunning, her charm a weapon as sharp as the dagger in question. "Uncle was a tyrant," she admitted, her voice trembling with emotion or artifice. The morning wore on. The tram stop seemed to close in around them, its silence oppressive, despite the bustle of the constables. Poirot paced the platform, his cane tapping a rhythm that mirrored his thoughts. The footprints, the silk, the dagger, the cigarette case, each was a thread in a tapestry of deceit, but the pattern remained elusive. "The truth, mon ami," he said to Japp. "It hides not in the objects, but in the hearts that placed them here. We must listen to what is not said, see what is not shown." The fog had lifted, but the mystery deepened, its tendrils wrapping around Poirot's mind. Elias Thornwood's death was no random act. It was a performance, staged with care and cruelty. As Poirot prepared to delve deeper, a woman's silhouette appeared at the platform's edge. Amelia Thornwood, watching from a distance, her veil fluttering like a moth in the wind. Poirot's eyes narrowed. The game, as he often said, was afoot. Chapter 3. Shadows of the Past. The morning sun, though feeble, cast a pallid glow over the Forgotten Tram Stop, its rays struggling to banish the lingering chill of the night's tragedy. The platform, still cordoned by the constabulary, seemed to hoard its secrets in the crevices of its weathered stones, where the ghosts of a bygone era whispered of betrayal and loss. The air was crisp, carrying the faint tang of the Thames, mingled with the rust of disused rails, and the faint, acrid scent of blood, now dried upon the bench where Elias Thornwood had met his end. The ornate dagger, its ciphered blade glinting with cryptic intent, remained embedded in the victim's chest, a silent sentinel awaiting the coroner's final ministrations. The scene was one of melancholy grandeur, a stage where the past and present collided in a tableau of murder foul. Hercule Poirot stood at the platform's edge, his immaculate figure a stark contrast to the decay around him. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, surveyed the scene with an intensity that belied his calm demeanour. His mind, a labyrinth of logic and intuition, sifted through the clues. The overlapping footprints, the scrap of scarlet silk, the tram ticket stub dated 1912, an anomaly that had fluttered from Thornwood's pocket, as if placed there by fate itself. The ticket, nothing. A keepsake, maybe. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. A keepsake, oui. But one that chooses this moment to reveal itself? No, it is a clue, perhaps a taunt. The tram stop's history was no mere backdrop. It was a character in this drama. In 1912, a tram had derailed here, its brakes failing on a rain-slicked night, plunging passengers into chaos. 7 lives were lost, and the line, once a vital artery of London's East End, was abandoned, its investors ruined, save for Elias Thornwood. The banker, then in his prime, had purchased shares at a pittance during the company's collapse, selling them later for a fortune when the land was repurposed. Whispers of his ruthlessness had lingered, tales of families left destitute while Thornwood's wealth grew. Had one such shadow from the past returned to exact retribution? Poirot's inquiries led him to the suspects, each a thread in the tapestry of Thornwood's life. Amelia Thornwood, the widow, stood apart from the constables, her black veil fluttering like a raven's wing. Her composure was a fortress, but Poirot noted a fleeting tremor in her hands, a crack in her stoic facade. Her motive, inheritance, was clear, yet her psychology suggested deeper currents. Resentment, perhaps, for a marriage that had become a gilded cage. "My husband was a man of order," she said when questioned, her voice smooth as polished marble. But order can stifle. Her alibi remained unverified, her evening alone at home a blank canvas for suspicion. Victor Langley, the business partner, was next, his gaunt frame hunched as if bearing the weight of years of subservience. His scowl deepened as Poirot approached, his eyes dark with a resentment that bordered on obsession. Psychologically, Langley was a man eroded by envy, his pride chafed by Thornwood's dominance. His motive, a financial dispute over embezzled funds, was corroborated by ledgers Japp had unearthed, showing discrepancies in their joint accounts. Thornwood thought himself untouchable, Langley growled, his alibi, a vague evening at his club, further weakened by the porter's hazy recollection. Poirot noted a cigarette burn on Langley's cuff, a detail that seemed trivial, yet nagged at his orderly mind. Clara Belmont, the disinherited niece, brought a burst of vitality to the grim scene. Her golden curls caught obsessively, a clue, perhaps, to her hidden depths. A fourth suspect emerged, Dr. Harold Grayson, a physician who had attended Thornwood's family for decades. A portly man in his 50s, with thinning hair and spectacles that magnified his nervous eyes, Grayson exuded a quiet unease. His physical presence was unassuming, but his psychological profile revealed a man burdened by loyalty stretched thin. His motive was less overt. A professional secret, perhaps, tied to Thornwood's health or past indiscretions. "Elias was a demanding patient," Grayson admitted, his voice tight. "But I served him faithfully. His alibi, a late surgery at his practice, was solid. Yet Poirot noted a prescription slip in Grayson's pocket, dated the night of the murder, hinting at an unscheduled errand. The clues multiplied, each a piece of the puzzle. The footprints, muddied by rain, suggested a confrontation. 2 sets, one heavy, one light, weaving a chaotic dance around the bench. The scarlet silk, identified by Poirot as Parisian, pointed to wealth or pretense. But whose? The tram ticket stub, its date an echo of the 1912 disaster, was the most perplexing. Why would Thornwood carry such a relic, and why had it fallen from his pocket? Poirot's mind seized on a crumpled letter, barely legible, found clutched in Thornwood's hand. The words, "Forgive me," were scrawled in his own script, a plea or a confession that deepened the mystery. A red herring complicated matters. The cigarette case, engraved with Langley's initials, seemed to implicate the business partner. Yet his claim of losing it weeks ago held a ring of plausibility. Poirot's instincts whispered of misdirection, a deliberate attempt to muddy the waters. "The criminal," he said to Japp, "wishes us to chase shadows, but the truth lies in the light of reason." As the morning progressed, Poirot paced the platform, his cane tapping a rhythm that echoed his thoughts. The tram stop's history gnawed at him. He requested records of the 1912 derailment, suspecting a connection beyond mere coincidence. Japp, sceptical but compliant, promised to deliver them. Meanwhile, Poirot observed the suspects from a distance. Amelia's veil slipped momentarily. Author's intent. As the coroner prepared to remove Thornwood's body, Poirot lingered, his eyes drawn to the rusted rails vanishing into the distance. The Forgotten Tram Stop was more than a crime scene. It was a crossroads of history and vengeance, where the sins of yesteryear had collided with the present. The little grey cells hummed with anticipation, for Poirot knew that the truth, like the tram that no longer came, was waiting just beyond the fog. The web of motives. The Forgotten Tram Stop stood bathed in the cold light of late morning, its desolation softened only slightly by the sun's tentative rays. The platform, still a stage for the constabulary's grim ballet, bore the scars of the previous night's violence. The bench, now empty of Elias Thornwood's body, was stained with the ghost of his blood, and the rusted rails seemed to hum with the weight of unspoken secrets. The air was sharp, carrying the briny tang of the nearby Thames, interwoven with the faint metallic scent of decay. The ornate dagger, removed by the coroner but still vivid in memory, had left its mark. Not just in flesh but in the minds of those who now gathered under Hercule Poirot's watchful gaze. The tram ticket stub, dated 1912, and the crumpled letter, bearing the words, "Forgive me," lay heavy in his thoughts, as did the scarlet silk and the cryptic cipher etched into the dagger's blade. Each clue was a thread, and Poirot, with his little grey cells, was determined to weave them into a tapestry of truth. Hercule Poirot stood at the platform's edge, his immaculate figure a beacon of order amidst chaos. His green eyes, sharp and unyielding, scanned the scene with the precision of a watchmaker assembling a delicate mechanism. His psychological profile, a blend of relentless logic and intuitive insight, made him uniquely suited to unravel the complexities of human deceit. "The crime, mon ami," he said to Inspector Japp, who stood nearby, his ruddy face etched with impatience. "It is not merely an act of violence. It is a performance, staged with care to conceal its true author." Japp, ever the pragmatist, grunted. "Performance or not, Poirot, we've got 4 suspects with motives as thick." Despite my warnings, perhaps he sought something. Or someone. Her alibi, a solitary evening at home, remained uncorroborated, and Poirot's eyes lingered on her gloved hands, which twisted a lace handkerchief with unconscious intensity. Victor Langley, the business partner, slouched in his chair, his gaunt frame radiating resentment. His hollow cheeks and dark eyes spoke of a man eroded by years of subservience, his pride a festering wound. Psychologically, he was a storm of suppressed rage, his motive rooted in a financial betrayal. Ledgers showed Thornwood had siphoned funds from their joint ventures, leaving Langley teetering on ruin. "He called it business," Langley spat, his voice raw. "I call it theft." His alibi, an evening at his club, was undermined by the porter's vague recollection and the cigarette burn on his cuff, which Poirot noted with a raised eyebrow. Langley's fingers drummed nervously, a rhythm that betrayed his unease. Clara Belmont, the disinherited niece, brought a spark of defiance to the tent. Her golden curls and bright blue eyes masked a core of steel, her psychological profile a blend of youthful impetuosity and calculated charm. Her motive, revenge for being cut from Thornwood's will, burned brightly in her words. "He thought my dreams were childish," she said, her voice trembling with passion. "He wanted me to marry for money, not write for it." Her timeline placed her near the tram stop, her chance walk a flimsy excuse. Poirot's gaze fell on her locket, which she clutched tightly, its surface worn as if it held a secret she could not release. When pressed, she snapped it shut, her eyes darting away, a telltale sign of concealment. Dr. Harold Grayson, the family physician, completed the quartet. A portly man in his 50s, with thinning hair and spectacles that magnified his anxious eyes, he exuded a quiet discomfort. His psychological profile revealed a man torn between loyalty and self-preservation, his motive tied to a professional secret, perhaps a diagnosis or indiscretion Thornwood had leveraged against him. "Elias was a demanding patient," Grayson said, his voice tight, "but I never failed him. His alibi, a late surgery, was solid, but the prescription slip in his pocket, dated the night of the murder, suggested an unscheduled errand, meaning obscured by the man's death. The dagger's cipher, a series of symbols known only to Thornwood's inner circle, suggested an intimate betrayal. A new clue emerged. A broken watch, stopped at 11:47 p.m., the exact time of the 1912 derailment, found near the bench. Was it a coincidence or a deliberate symbol? A red herring complicated the web, a tram conductor's badge, rusted, and bearing the initials E.T., found in the mud. At first it seemed to point to Thornwood himself, a relic of his investment in the tram line, but Japp's inquiries revealed no record of Thornwood ever holding such a role, suggesting it was planted to mislead. Poirot's moustaches twitched. "The criminal," he said, "weaves a web of deception, but the threads are fraying." Poirot's questions probed deeper, seeking the psychological undercurrents that bound the suspects to the victim. Amelia spoke of Elias's nocturnal walks, her tone hinting at suspicion of his destinations. "He never shared his plans," she said, her eyes narrowing. Langley revealed a bitter argument days before the murder, Thornwood dismissing his demands for restitution. "He laughed at me," Langley muttered, his fists clenching. Clara admitted to a confrontation at the tram stop weeks prior, where Thornwood had mocked her ambitions. "I hated him for it," she confessed, her locket clicking open to reveal a photograph of a young Elias, startling Poirot. Grayson, pressed about the prescription slip, stammered, claiming it was for a patient near the tram stop, a patient who did not exist. The tram stop's history loomed larger, its 1912 derailment a shadow over the present. Poirot requested survivor records, suspecting a connection to the suspects. Japp, grumbling but compliant, promised to deliver them. Meanwhile, Poirot observed the suspects' interactions. Amelia's gaze lingered on Langley, a flicker of disdain crossing her face. Clara avoided Grayson, her fingers tightening on her locket. Langley lit another cigarette, the match flaring as he muttered about debts unpaid. Grayson's spectacles slipped, his hands trembling as he adjusted them. As the tent grew stifling, Poirot stepped back to the platform, his cane tapping a rhythm of contemplation. The clues, footprints, silk, ticket, letter, watch, cipher, formed a that had placed them there. The web of motives was intricate, but Hercule Poirot, with his little grey cells, was ready to unravel it. Chapter 5. The Echoes of Suspicion. The Forgotten Tram Stop, bathed in the pallid light of noon, seemed to hold its breath, as if aware of the scrutiny it endured. The platform, its cobblestones scoured by the night's rain, bore faint traces of Elias Thornwood's blood, a grim reminder of the violence that had shattered its solitude. The rusted rails, stretching into the distance, whispered of a past that refused to remain buried, their faint scratches, fresh and deliberate, catching Hercule Poirot's keen eye. The air was sharp with the Thames's briny tang, laced with the metallic scent of decay, as if the tram stop itself mourned its lost vitality. The clues, footprints, scarlet silk, a 1912 tram ticket stub with the note, "Meet me at midnight, E.T., a crumpled letter reading, "Forgive me." A broken watch stopped at 11:47 p.m., and the ciphered dagger formed a constellation of mystery, each point gleaming with hidden meaning. Poirot, with his little grey cells humming, stood poised to unravel the threads of deceit. Hercule Poirot, his immaculate figure a beacon of order, paced the platform, his cane tapping a rhythm that mirrored his thoughts. His green eyes, sharp as polished emeralds, missed nothing. The subtle wear on the bench's edge, the angle of the scratches on the rails, the nervous glances of the constables nearby. Psychologically, Poirot was a maestro of deduction, his mind a tapestry of logic woven with intuitive leaps. "The crime, mon ami," he said to Inspector Japp, who stood with his hands thrust into his overcoat pockets, "is a puzzle of the heart as much as the mind. We must seek the why before the who." Japp, his ruddy face creased with skepticism, snorted. "Heart or no, Poirot, we've got 4 suspects with enough grudges to fill a ledger. Let's shake their stories and see what falls out." The investigation deepened within the constabulary tent, where the suspects, Amelia Thornwood, Victor Langley, Clara Belmont, and Dr. Harold Grayson, sat under Poirot's piercing gaze. The tense canvas walls fluttered. Evening alone wavered under scrutiny, and Poirot observed her fingers tracing the edge of a hidden letter in her reticule, its paper matching the "Forgive Me" note. Victor Langley, the business partner, slumped in his chair, his gaunt frame radiating bitterness. His dark eyes burned with a resentment that defined his psychological profile. A man whose pride had been crushed by Thornwood's dominance. His motive, a financial betrayal, was bolstered by ledgers showing missing funds. "He bled me dry," Langley muttered, his voice raw. That ticket? Probably another of his trophies. His alibi, a vague evening at his club, faltered as the porter recalled Langley leaving early. Poirot noted a fresh scratch on Langley's hand, mirroring the marks on the rails. A coincidence? Or a clue? Clara Belmont, the disinherited niece, brought a spark of defiance, her golden curls and blue eyes masking a core of steel. Her psychological profile was a blend of impetuosity and cunning, her motive rooted in revenge for being cut from Thornwood's will. "He mocked my dreams," she said, her voice trembling with suppressed fury. "That ticket means nothing to me." Her timeline, placing her near the tram stop for a chance walk, was suspiciously convenient. Poirot's gaze lingered on her locket, which she opened briefly, revealing a photograph of a young Elias, her gasp audible as she snapped it shut. Was it sentiment or guilt? Dr. Harold Grayson, the physician, fidgeted with his spectacles, his portly frame and thinning hair belying a nervous energy. His psychological profile suggested a man torn between duty and fear, his motive tied to a professional secret. Perhaps a diagnosis Thornwood had exploited. "Elias was healthy, as far as I knew," Grayson stammered, his eyes darting to the prescription slip in his pocket, dated the night of the murder. His alibi, a late surgery, held. But Poirot noted Grayson's reluctance to meet Amelia's gaze, a silent thread connecting them. The clues demanded closer scrutiny. The footprints, broad and heavy, delicate and fleeting, suggested a confrontation, their overlap a chaotic dance. The scarlet silk, Parisian and costly, pointed to wealth. But whose? The tram ticket stub, with its cryptic note, implied a plan in the mud. It seemed to implicate the tram stop's history, but its pristine condition suggested it was planted, a distraction from the true motive. Poirot's moustaches twitched. "The criminal," he said, "scatters crumbs to lead us astray, but the truth lies in the silences." Poirot's interrogations grew sharper, seeking inconsistencies. Amelia claimed ignorance of the ticket, but faltered when pressed about Elias's late-night habits, her veil slipping to reveal a fleeting smirk. Langley's scratch, when questioned, was dismissed as a gardening mishap, yet his eyes betrayed panic. Clara's locket, when Poirot requested to see it, prompted a defensive outburst. "It's private!" Her photograph of Elias suggested a bond, or a grudge, deeper than she admitted. Grayson, asked about the prescription slip, claimed it was for a passing patient. But Japp's inquiries found no such person, deepening the physician's unease. The tram stop's history loomed larger, its 1912 derailment a spectre haunting the present. Poirot, poring over survivor records Japp had procured, noted a name. Margaret Langley, Victor's mother, among the victims. Had Langley's resentment been forged in that tragedy? His financial disputes a mere mask for a deeper vengeance. Amelia's family too had ties to the tram line, her father a minor investor ruined by Thornwood's manoeuvres. Clara's locket photograph hinted at a personal connection to the derailment, perhaps a lost relative. Grayson's records showed he had treated survivors, his loyalty to Thornwood perhaps born of coercion. As the noon sun climbed, the tent grew oppressive, the suspect's glances weaving a web of suspicion. Amelia's eyes lingered on Clara, a flicker of recognition passing between them. Langley's cigarette smoke curled toward Grayson, who coughed and looked away. Clara's fingers tightened on her locket, her defiance wavering. Poirot, observing these silent exchanges, felt the puzzle's edges sharpen. "The truth," he said to Japp, "is in the glances, the hesitations, the things left unsaid." A new discovery shifted the scene. A hidden compartment in the bench, revealed when a constable's boot dislodged a loose plank. Inside was a sealed envelope, addressed to E.T. in an unfamiliar hand, containing a single word: justice. Poirot, rusted rails and weathered bench holding secrets as stubbornly as the cobblestones beneath. The air carried the Thames's briny breath, laced with a faint floral perfume that lingered like an uninvited guest, its source still a mystery. The platform, though cleared of Elias Thornwood's body, bore the indelible stain of his blood, a silent testament to the violence that had shattered its solitude. Hercule Poirot stood at its centre, his immaculate figure a stark contrast to the decay, his green eyes gleaming with the relentless curiosity of a mind that thrived on disorder's unravelling. The clues, overlapping footprints, a scrap of scarlet silk, a 1912 tram ticket stub with the note, "Meet me at midnight, E.T., a crumpled letter reading, "Forgive me," a broken watch stopped at 11:47 p.m., a ciphered dagger, a floral scent, and a hidden envelope marked "Justice for 12" formed a labyrinth of deception. Poirot's little grey cells hummed, poised to trace the tangled threads to their source. "Mon ami," Poirot said to Inspector Japp, who stood nearby, his ruddy face creased with frustration. "The crime is a tapestry, woven with care to obscure its pattern. But the threads, they betray the weaver." Japp, his pragmatic cynicism a foil to Poirot's elegance, snorted. "Threads or not, Poirot, we've got 4 suspects with motives as murky as the Thames. That envelope, Justice for 12, points to the derailment. But who's holding the grudge?" Poirot's moustaches twitched, a sign of his mind's quiet triumph. "The grudge, it is not singular. It is shared, perhaps, by those who stand before us." The investigation moved to a nearby police station, where the suspects, Amelia Thornwood, Victor Langley, Clara Belmont, and Dr. Harold Grayson, faced Poirot's relentless scrutiny. The room, stark and utilitarian, amplified their unease, its bare walls echoing their guarded words. Poirot's questions, delivered with surgical precision, sought not just answers, but the flickers of emotion that revealed hidden truths. Amelia Thornwood sat with the poise of a queen, her raven hair and grey eyes framed by a veil that seemed to shield a secret as much as her grief. Her psychological profile, frame and dark eyes radiating a bitterness that defined his psyche. His motive, financial betrayal, was clear, but the derailment's shadow loomed larger. His mother, Margaret Langley, had died in the 1912 tragedy, her loss fueling his resentment. "Thornwood profited from our ruin," he growled, his scratched hand matching the rail marks, clenching. His alibi, a vague club evening, crumbled when the porter confirmed he left before 10 p.m. The envelope's message drew a scowl, but his eyes darted to Clara, a silent accusation. Poirot observed a cigarette stub in Langley's pocket, its brand matching one found near the bench. A coincidence or a clue? Clara Belmont, the disinherited niece, brought a defiant energy, her golden curls and blue eyes masking a calculating core. Her psychological profile, impetuous yet cunning, pointed to revenge for being cut from Thornwood's will. The locket, containing a photograph of a young Elias, suggested a deeper bond, perhaps tied to the derailment. "He was family," she said, her voice catching, "but he crushed my dreams." Her chance walk near the tram stop aligned suspiciously with the ticket's midnight note. When shown the envelope, she paled, her fingers snapping the locket shut. Poirot's question about the photograph drew a sharp retort. "It's personal." Her reaction hinted at a secret, perhaps a lost relative from 1912. Dr. Harold Grayson, the physician, fidgeted with his spectacles, his portly frame and thinning hair belying a nervous tension. His psychological profile, loyalty strained by fear, suggested a motive tied to a professional secret, possibly a diagnosis Thornwood had exploited. The prescription slip, dated the murder night, placed him near the tram stop, contradicting his surgery alibi. "I treated survivors of the derailment," he admitted, his voice tight. "Elias knew their pain." The envelope's message made him flinch, his spectacles slipping as he avoided Amelia's gaze. Poirot noted a faint ink stain on Grayson's cuff, matching the envelope's script, a subtle but telling link. The clues wove a complex web. The footprints suggested a confrontation, their overlap a dance of intent. The scarlet silk, Parisian and costly, pointed to wealth, but the floral perfume, unmatched by any suspect, hinted at an unseen player. Complicated matters. A locket charm, identical to Clara's, found in the mud near the bench. It seemed to implicate her, but its pristine condition suggested it was planted, a distraction from the true culprit. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The criminal," he said, "scatters false trails, but the truth lies in the details." Poirot's interrogations grew sharper. Amelia's claim of ignorance about the derailment faltered when Poirot mentioned her father, a ruined investor from 1912. He lost everything, she admitted, her veil slipping to reveal a clenched jaw. Langley's scratched hand when pressed was blamed on a workshop accident, but his eyes betrayed panic when the cigarette stub was mentioned. Clara's locket photograph, revealed as Elias with a young girl, possibly her mother, a derailment victim, drew tears, her defiance crumbling. Grayson, questioned about the ink stain, stammered, claiming a clerical error, but his avoidance of Amelia's gaze deepened Poirot's suspicions. The derailment's records delivered by Japp revealed connections. Amelia's father, a minor investor, had died penniless after Thornwood's manoeuvres. Clara's mother, a passenger, had perished, leaving her orphaned. Grayson had treated survivors, his records hinting at a secret deal with Thornwood to suppress a scandal. Langley's mother, the most direct victim, tied his motive to vengeance. The envelope's message suggested a collective grudge, but whose hand had penned it? As the afternoon waned, the station's stark light cast long shadows, mirroring the suspect's unease. Amelia's glance at Clara held a flicker of recognition, perhaps shared history. Langley's cigarette smoke curled toward Grayson, who coughed and looked away. Clara's locket clicked open, her fingers trembling. Poirot, observing these silent exchanges, felt the puzzle's edges align. The truth, he said to Japp, is in the connections, the silences between words. A final discovery shifted the scene. A faint trail of ash, leading from the bench to the rails, matched Langley's cigarette brand. Poirot knelt, his gloved hand hovering over the trail. "Curieux," he murmured. "The ash, it is fresh, deliberate. Someone wishes us to follow." The tram stop, once a silent relic, now thrummed. Elias Thornwood's body bore the faint stain of his blood, a silent echo of the violence that had shattered its solitude. The air was sharp with the Thames's briny tang, interwoven with the elusive floral perfume that lingered like a ghost, its source still untraced. Hercule Poirot stood at the platform's heart, his immaculate figure a beacon of order amidst decay. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, traced the faint scratches on the rails, fresh, deliberate marks that whispered of intent. The clues, overlapping footprints, scarlet silk, a 1912 tram ticket stub with "Meet me at midnight, E.T." A crumpled letter reading, "Forgive me." A broken watch stopped at 11:47 p.m. A ciphered dagger, a floral scent, a pearl earring, and an envelope marked "Justice for 12 ml" formed a mosaic of deception. A trail of ash, matching Victor Langley's cigarette brand, added a new thread to the tapestry. Poirot's little grey cells thrummed, sensing an unseen player in this deadly game. "Mon ami," Poirot said to Inspector Japp, who stood nearby, his ruddy face etched with exasperation. "The crime is a chessboard, and we have yet to identify all the pieces. This ash, it is not mere refuse, it is a signpost." Japp, his pragmatic cynicism ever at odds with Poirot's finesse, rubbed his neck. "Signpost or not, Poirot, that envelope points to Langley's mother. M.L. Margaret Langley, killed in 12. He's got motive in spades." Poirot's moustaches twitched, a subtle signal of his mind's quiet dance. "Oui, but the hand that scatters ash may not be the hand that wields the dagger. We must look beyond the obvious." The investigation shifted to a cramped police station room, its stark walls amplifying the tension among the suspects. Amelia Thornwood, Victor Langley, Clara Belmont, and Dr. Harold Grayson. Poirot's questions, delivered with the precision of a sculptor's chisel, sought the cracks in their facades, probing for the unseen player who tied the clues together. Amelia Thornwood sat with regal composure, her raven hair and grey eyes framed by a veil that seemed to guard a secret as much as her grief. Motive, vengeance for his mother's death in the derailment and financial betrayal by Thornwood, was potent. The ash trail, matching his cigarette brand, and the envelope's M.L. pointed directly at him. "Thornwood built his fortune on our graves," he snarled, his scratched hand clenching. His alibi, an early departure from his club, was shaky, and the cigarette stub in his pocket matched the ash. Yet Poirot sensed misdirection, noting Langley's glance at Clara, as if seeking her reaction. Was he the player, or a pawn? Clara Belmont, the disinherited niece, brought a defiant spark, her golden curls and blue eyes masking a calculating core. Her psychological profile, impetuous yet cunning, pointed to revenge for being cut from Thornwood's will, deepened by her mother's death in the derailment. Her locket, containing a photograph of a young Elias with a girl, likely her mother, suggested a personal vendetta. "He stole my future," she said, her voice trembling. The envelope's message made her pale, her fingers snapping the locket shut. Her chance walk near the tram stop aligned with the ticket's midnight note, but the pearl earring, unmatched by her jewellery, hinted at another's presence. Poirot's question about the photograph drew a defensive snap. "It's all I have left." Her reaction hinted at a hidden truth. Dr. Harold Grayson, the physician, fidgeted with his spectacles, his portly frame and thinning hair belying a nervous tension. His psychological profile, loyalty strained by fear, suggested a motive tied to a secret, perhaps a diagnosis Thornwood had exploited. The prescription slip, placing him near the tram stop, and the ink stain on his cuff matching the envelope's script, raised suspicions. "I knew of the derailment's pain," he stammered, avoiding Amelia's gaze. The envelope's message made him flinch, his spectacles slipping. Poirot noted a faint tremor in Grayson's hands, a sign of guilt or dread. The clues wove a tightening web. The footprints, broad and delicate, suggested a confrontation, their overlap a chaotic dance. The scarlet silk, Parisian and costly, pointed to wealth, but the floral perfume, unmatched by any suspect, hinted at an unseen figure. The tram ticket stub, with its cryptic note, implied a planned meeting, its 1912 date tying it to the derailment. The "Forgive Me" letter designed to mislead. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The unseen player," he said, "hides in plain sight, using the past to obscure the present." Poirot's interrogations intensified. Amelia's claim of ignorance about Margaret Langley faltered when Poirot mentioned her father's ruin, her veil slipping to reveal a clenched jaw. "He suffered because of Elias," she admitted, her eyes darting to Clara. Langley's scratched hand, blamed on a workshop accident, drew scrutiny when the ash trail was mentioned, his panic palpable. Clara's locket photograph, confirmed as Elias with her mother, drew tears, her defiance crumbling. "She died because of him," she whispered, tying her motive to the derailment. Grayson, pressed about the ink stain, claimed a clerical error, but his avoidance of Amelia's gaze deepened suspicions of a shared secret. The derailment records revealed further connections. Amelia's father, a ruined investor, had clashed with Thornwood before his death. Clara's mother, a passenger, had left her orphaned, her locket a relic of loss. Grayson's treatment of survivors included a suppressed scandal, a derailment victim's death under suspicious circumstances, covered up by Thornwood. Langley's mother, Margaret, was the linchpin, her death fueling his rage. The envelope's ML suggested a collective vendetta, but the perfume and earring pointed elsewhere. As the afternoon faded, the station's stark light cast long shadows, mirroring the suspect's unease. Amelia's glance at Clara held a flicker of complicity. Langley's cigarette smoke curled toward Grayson, who coughed and looked away. Clara's locket clicked open, her fingers trembling. Poirot, observing these silent exchanges, felt the puzzle's edges sharpen. "The unseen player," he said to Japp, "is not absent. They are here, their shadow cast by every clue." A final discovery shifted the scene. A faint footprint, smaller than the others, hidden beneath the bench, its tread distinct. A woman's shoe, but not Clara's or Amelia's. Poirot knelt, his gloved hand tracing its outline. "Mon Dieu," he murmured, "the fifth player has left their mark." The tram stop, a crucible of vengeance, pulsed with the echoes of suspicion, its secrets etched in ash and shadow. Poirot's this desolate stage, his immaculate figure a beacon of order amidst decay, his green eyes, sharp as polished emeralds, lingered on the faint scratches on the rails and a newly discovered footprint, a woman's, smaller than those of Amelia or Clara, hidden beneath the bench. The clues, overlapping footprints, scarlet silk, a 1912 tram ticket stub with "Meet me at midnight, E.T." A crumpled letter reading "Forgive me." A broken watch stopped at 11:47 p.m., a ciphered dagger, a floral scent, a pearl earring, an envelope marked "Justice for 12 ml," and a trail of ash matching Victor Langley's cigarette brand wove a web of deception. Poirot's little grey cells thrummed, sensing the unseen player was close, their shadow cast across every clue. "Mon ami," Poirot said to Inspector Japp, who stood nearby, his ruddy face creased with impatience. The truth is a veil, and we must lift it gently, lest it tear. This footprint, it is not of our known players. Jap, his pragmatic cynicism clashing with Poirot's finesse, grunted. Another woman? Or someone playing tricks? That envelope, justice for 12 ml, screams Langley. But this footprint muddies everything. Poirot's moustaches twitched, a sign of his mind's quiet triumph. The unseen player weaves a clever deception, but their steps betray them. The investigation returned to the police station, where the suspects, Amelia Thornwood, Victor Langley, Clara Belmont, and Dr. Harold Grayson, faced Poirot's relentless scrutiny in a stark room that amplified their unease. The air was thick with tension, the suspects' glances weaving a silent narrative of suspicion. Poirot's questions, delivered with the precision of a maestro, sought the cracks in their facades, probing for the unseen player who tied the clues together. Amelia Thornwood sat with regal poise, her raven hair and grey eyes framed by a veil that seemed to guard a secret as much as her grief. Her psychological profile, a woman of iron control masking deep wounds, suggested a motive beyond inheritance, tied to her father's ruin in the 1912 derailment. The smaller footprint on involvement. Thornwood deserved his fate, he growled, his scratched hand clenching. His alibi, an early club departure, was shaky, and the cigarette stub in his pocket matched the ash. Yet Poirot sensed misdirection, noting Langley's glance at Clara, as if seeking her complicity. Was he the mastermind or a pawn? Clara Belmont, the disinherited niece, brought a defiant spark, her golden curls and blue eyes masking a calculating core. Her psychological profile, impetuous yet cunning, pointed to revenge for being cut from Thornwood's will, deepened by her mother's death in the derailment. Her locket, containing a photograph of a young Elias with her mother, suggested a personal vendetta. "He stole my family," she said, her voice trembling. The smaller footprint made her flinch, her fingers snapping the locket shut. Her chance walk aligned with the ticket's midnight note, but the pearl earring, unmatched by her jewellery, hinted at another's presence. Poirot's question about the photograph drew a sharp retort. "It's mine to keep." Her reaction hinted at a hidden truth. Dr. Harold Grayson, the physician, fidgeted with his spectacles, his portly frame and thinning hair belying a nervous tension. His psychological profile, loyalty strained by fear, suggested a motive tied to a secret, possibly a diagnosis Thornwood exploited. The prescription slip, placing him near the tram stop, and the ink stain on his cuff, matching the envelope's script, raised suspicions. "I knew the derailment's toll," he stammered, avoiding Amelia's gaze. The smaller footprint made him flinch, his spectacles slipping. Poirot noted a faint tremor in Grayson's hands, a sign of guilt or dread, and a trace of the crime scene's floral perfume on his coat, barely detectable but significant. The clues tightened the web. The footprints, broad, delicate, and now the smaller, hidden one, suggested a complex confrontation. The scarlet silk, Parisian and costly, pointed to wealth, but the floral perfume, faintly on Grayson's coat, hinted at a connection to the unseen player. The tram ticket stub, with "Meet me at midnight, E.T.," implied a planned meeting, its 1912 date tying it to the derailment. The "Forgive me" plant, designed to mislead. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The unseen player," he said, "hides behind a veil of deception, but their traces are clear." Poirot's interrogations grew sharper. Amelia's claim of ignorance about the derailment faltered when Poirot mentioned her father's ruin, her veil slipping to reveal a clenched jaw. "He lost everything to Elias," she admitted, her eyes darting to Clara. Langley's scratched hand, blamed on a workshop accident, drew scrutiny when the ash trail was mentioned, his panic palpable. Clara's locket photograph, confirmed as Elias with her mother, drew tears, her defiance crumbling. "She died because of him," she whispered. Grayson, pressed about the perfume on his coat, claimed a patient's scent, but his avoidance of Amelia's gaze deepened suspicions of a shared secret. The derailment records revealed deeper connections. Amelia's father, a ruined investor, had blamed Thornwood for his downfall. Clara's mother, a passenger, left her orphaned, her locket a relic of loss. Grayson's treatment of survivors included a covered-up death, possibly tied to Thornwood's influence. Langley's mother, Margaret, was the linchpin, her death fueling his rage. The smaller footprint and torn glove suggested a fifth figure, perhaps a woman tied to the derailment's aftermath. As the afternoon faded, the station's stark light cast long shadows, mirroring the suspect's unease. Amelia's glance at Clara held a flicker of complicity. Langley's cigarette smoke curled toward Grayson, who coughed and looked away. Clara's locket clicked open, her fingers trembling. Poirot, observing these silent exchanges, felt the puzzle's edges align. "The unseen player," he said to Japp, "is not absent. They are woven into this web." A final discovery shifted the scene. A faint lipstick mark, barely visible on the torn glove, its shade unmatched by Amelia or Clara. Poirot knelt, his gloved hand tracing its outline. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. The veil lifts, and the player steps forward. The tram stop, a crucible of vengeance, pulsed with the echoes of deception, its secrets etched in ash and shadow. Poirot's little grey cells burned, the truth tantalizingly close, waiting to be unveiled by the light of reason. Chapter 9. Faint scratches on the rails, and the small hidden footprint, distinctly feminine, yet unmatched by Amelia or Clara. The clues: overlapping footprints, scarlet silk, a 1912 tram ticket stub with "Meet me at midnight, E.T., a crumpled letter reading "Forgive me," a broken watch stopped at 11:47 p.m., a ciphered dagger, a floral scent, a pearl earring, an envelope marked "Justice for 12 ml, betrayed by love," the trail of ash tied to Victor Langley, and a torn silk glove with a lipstick mark formed a labyrinth of deception. Poirot's little grey cells thrummed, sensing the unseen player's shadow drawing closer. "Mon ami," Poirot said to Inspector Japp, who stood nearby, his ruddy face taut with anticipation. "The truth lies in the penumbra, the half-light where secrets hide. This glove, this lipstick, they are the marks of our unseen player." Japp, his pragmatic cynicism tempered by Poirot's persistence, rubbed his chin. "Langley's ash, the envelope's ML, it all points to him, but this glove throws a spanner in the works. A woman, you think?" Poirot's moustaches twitched, a sign of his mind's quiet triumph. "Oui, but not we have fully seen." The veil of deception lifts slowly. The investigation convened in the police station's stark room, where the suspects, Amelia Thornwood, Victor Langley, Clara Belmont and Dr. Harold Grayson, faced Poirot's unrelenting scrutiny. The air was heavy with tension, the suspects' glances weaving a tapestry of suspicion. Poirot's questions, delivered with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel, probed for the unseen player who tied the clues together. Amelia Thornwood sat with regal composure, her raven hair and grey eyes framed by a veil that seemed to conceal as much as it revealed. Her psychological profile, a woman of iron will masking deep wounds, suggested a motive beyond inheritance, tied to her father's ruin in the 1912 derailment. The torn glove and lipstick mark unsettled her, her fingers on her reticule, where a letter matching the "Forgive me" note hid. "Elias was a man of secrets," she said, her voice smooth but edged with strain. "That glove is not mine." Her alibi, a solitary evening, was shattered by a neighbour's testimony of matching the ash. Poirot noted Langley's glance at Clara, a flicker of complicity or accusation, and a faint lipstick stain on his collar, barely visible but unmatched by the glove's shade. Clara Belmont, the disinherited niece, brought a defiant spark, her golden curls and blue eyes masking a calculating core. Her psychological profile, impetuous yet cunning, pointed to revenge for being cut from Thornwood's will, deepened by her mother's death in the derailment. Her locket, containing a photograph of a young Elias with her mother, suggested a personal vendetta. "He stole my family," she said, her voice trembling. The glove and lipstick made her flinch, her fingers snapping the locket shut. Her chance walk aligned with the ticket's midnight note, but the pearl earring and glove, unmatched by her possessions, hinted at another's presence. Poirot's question about the photograph drew a tearful retort. "It's all I have." Her reaction hinted at a deeper secret. Dr. Harold Grayson, the physician, fidgeted with his spectacles, his portly frame and thinning hair belying a nervous tension. His psychological profile, loyalty strained by fear, suggested a motive tied to a secret, possibly a diagnosis Thornwood exploited. The prescription slip, placing him near the tram stop, and the ink stain on his cuff matching the envelope's script, raised suspicions. The glove's lipstick mark made him flinch, his spectacles slipping. "I knew the derailment's pain," he stammered, avoiding Amelia's gaze. Poirot noted a faint trace of the crime scene's floral perfume on his coat, and a nervous tick when the envelope's "betrayed by love" was mentioned, suggesting a personal connection. The clues tightened the web. The footprints, broad, delicate, and the smaller, hidden one, suggested a complex confrontation. The scarlet silk and torn glove, both Parisian, pointed to wealth, but the unmatched lipstick and perfume hinted at an unseen woman. The tram ticket stub, with "Meet me at midnight, E.T.," implied a planned meeting, its 1912 date tying it to the derailment. The "Forgive me" letter suggested remorse or manipulation. The broken watch, stopped at the derailment's time, was a deliberate symbol. The dagger's cipher, known to Thornwood's circle, pointed to betrayal. The envelopes, "Justice for 12" half-truths, but their threads fray under scrutiny. Poirot's interrogations grew sharper. Amelia's claim of ignorance about the derailment faltered when Poirot mentioned her father's ruin, her veil slipping to reveal a clenched jaw. "He died, broken," she admitted, her eyes darting to Clara. Langley's scratched hand and lipstick-stained collar, when pressed, drew a defensive snarl. "It's from a club acquaintance." Clara's locket photograph, confirmed as Elias with her mother, drew sobs, her defiance crumbling. "She loved him once," she whispered, hinting at a romantic betrayal tied to M.L. Grayson, pressed about the perfume, claimed a patient's scent, but his avoidance of Amelia's gaze deepened suspicions of a shared secret. The derailment records revealed deeper connections. Amelia's father, a ruined investor, had cursed Thornwood's name. Clara's mother, a passenger, had been Elias's fiancée before her death, tying "betrayed by love" to a personal wound. Grayson's treatment of survivors included a covered-up death, possibly linked to Thornwood's influence. Langley's mother, Margaret, was the linchpin, her death fueling his rage. The handkerchief's "LV" suggested a new figure, perhaps Lily Vaughan, a derailment survivor who vanished, rumoured to have been Thornwood's mistress. As twilight deepened, the station's stark light cast long shadows, mirroring the suspect's unease. Amelia's glance at Clara held a flicker of shared pain. Langley's cigarette smoke curled toward Grayson, who coughed and looked away. Clara's locket clicked open, her fingers trembling. Poirot, observing these silent exchanges, felt the puzzle's edges align. "The unseen player," he said to Jap, "is no phantom. They are here, their heart beating in this room." A final discovery shifted the scene, a faint scratch on the handkerchief matching the rail marks, suggesting it was dropped during a struggle. Poirot knelt, his gloved hand tracing its outline. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. The penumbra lifts, and the truth emerges. The tram stop, a crucible of vengeance, pulsed with the echoes of deception, its secrets etched in silk and shadow. Poirot's little grey cells burned, the truth tantalizingly close, ready to be unveiled. Chapter 10. The Unveiling of Truth. The Forgotten Tram Stop, shrank emeralds, traced the faint scratches on the rails, the small feminine footprint, and the constellation of clues. Overlapping footprints, scarlet silk, a 1912 tram ticket stub with "Meet me at midnight, E.T., a crumpled letter reading "Forgive me," a broken watch stopped at 11:47 p.m., a ciphered dagger, a pearl earring, an envelope marked "Justice for 12, M.L., betrayed by love," a trail of ash tied to Victor Langley, a torn silk glove with a lipstick mark, and a monogrammed handkerchief with "LV" initials. Poirot's little grey cells blazed, the truth no longer a shadow but a figure stepping into the light. "Mes amis," Poirot addressed the gathered suspects: Amelia Thornwood, Victor Langley, Clara Belmont, and Dr. Harold Grayson, his voice resonant with quiet authority. "The time has come to lift the veil of deception. The murder of Elias Thornwood was no mere act of passion, it was a symphony of vengeance, composed in the shadows of the past." Inspector Japp, standing nearby, his ruddy face taut with anticipation, nodded. "Get on with it, Poirot. That LV handkerchief and the glove, they point to someone new, don't they?" Poirot's moustaches twitched, a sign of his triumph. "Oui, mon ami. But the truth is not in one clue alone. It is in their harmony." The suspects, assembled at the tram stop under the constabulary's watch, stood in a tense semicircle, the platform's desolation amplifying their unease. Poirot's gaze, piercing and unrelenting, swept over them, his questions now replaced by a narrative that wove the clues into a coherent whole. Amelia Thornwood stood with regal poise, her raven hair and grey eyes framed by a veil that could no longer hide her secrets. Her psychological profile, iron control masking deep wounds, pointed to a motive tied to her father's ruin in the 1912 derailment. The ink smudge on her glove, matching the envelope's script, and her absence until dawn betrayed her involvement. "Madame," Poirot said, "your father's loss fueled your resentment, but it was Elias's betrayal of another that drove you to act." Her veil trembled, her composure cracking. Victor Langley slouched, his gaunt frame, and revealed a romantic betrayal. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said, "your mother's loss was your wound, but another guided your hand." Clara's fingers snapped the locket shut, tears brimming. Dr. Harold Grayson, fidgeting with his spectacles, exuded nervous tension. His psychological profile, loyalty strained by fear, suggested a motive tied to a secret Thornwood exploited, confirmed by the prescription slip and ink stain. The faint floral perfume on his coat linked him to the crime scene. "Doctor," Poirot said, "you knew the truth and kept silent, but your silence was not innocent." Grayson's spectacles slipped, his face paling. Poirot began his deduction, his voice a steady cadence. The murder of Elias Thornwood was rooted in the 1912 derailment, the tragedy that claimed lives and fortunes. Margaret Langley died, leaving her son Victor consumed by vengeance. Clara's mother, Elias's fiancée, perished, her love betrayed by his ambition. Amelia's father, a ruined investor, cursed Elias's name. Grayson, treating survivors, hid a scandal, a patient's death under suspicious circumstances, silenced by Thornwood's influence. But the unseen player, the architect of this crime, was Lily Vaughan, LV, a derailment survivor and Thornwood's mistress, who vanished after the tragedy. The clues aligned. The tram ticket stub with "Meet me at midnight, E.T." was Lily's lure, drawing Thornwood to the tram stop. The "Forgive me" letter in his hand was his attempt to atone for abandoning Lily, pregnant and destitute after the derailment. The broken watch, stopped at 11:47 p.m., marked the derailment's time, a symbol of her vengeance. The ciphered dagger known to Thornwood's circle was Lily's, a gift from Elias now turned against him. The scarlet silk, torn glove and pearl earring were hers, dropped in the struggle. The floral perfume detected on Grayson's coat was Lily's signature, linking him as her confidant. The envelope's "Justice for 12 ml betrayed by love" was her declaration, mistakenly thought to implicate only Margaret Langley. The ash trail, a red herring, was planted by Lily to frame Victor. Lily Vaughan, Poirot continued, returned to exact justice. She enlisted Amelia, whose father's ruin fueled her complicity, and Clara, found in a hidden rail crevice, inscribed with LV and containing a photograph of Lily with Elias. "Lily stabbed Thornwood," Poirot declared, her rage fueled by a love betrayed and a child lost. "She vanished again, leaving you to bear the suspicion." Amelia's veil fell, her face crumpling. "She promised justice," she whispered. Clara sobbed, her locket clutched tightly. "I wanted him to pay." Grayson's spectacles dropped, his voice a whisper. "She knew everything." Langley, stunned, muttered, "I hated him, but I didn't kill him." Japp, wide-eyed, signalled the constables. "We'll find this Lily Vaughan," he vowed. Poirot stepped back, his cane tapping the platform. "The tram stop," he said, "was the stage for a tragedy replayed. The truth, mes amis, is in the heart's silent cries." The suspects, broken by revelation, stood in the dusk's embrace, the tram stop a silent witness to their unravelling. The clues, once scattered, now formed a portrait of vengeance, painted in blood and shadow. Poirot's little grey cells, triumphant, rested at last.